Not too long of a wait there. What's up, everybody? Good to see you all here. Good to see you all here. Hopefully, it was a good weekend for all of you as we are now rolling into Sunday night, sadly. No one likes Sunday nights. I don't. So, good to see all of you. Good to see you. Lots of things to kind of cover. So we'll talk about all of it. I think we'll have enough time before my brother goes live, which should be in the next 2 or 3 hours. At some point tonight, he'll go live and he'll do his true crime and he'll cover the news as well. For me, though, I wanted to go over the Lebanon situation specifically. I think this is a big escalation. The reason why is because this seems to be not Lebanon, but Israel's hardest offensive from an aerial assault perspective on Lebanon since the ceasefire was brokered at the end of June. And so now we're kind of seeing an escalation that we haven't seen in some time. And of course, there's been back and forth throughout the entire summer between the IDF and Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. But this strike that we saw about a day and a half ago now at this point is probably the grandest one that we've seen since the end of June, like I've said. So I am fearful that there will be retaliation from Hezbollah and or Iran against Israel. Does that mean rockets in the north? Does that mean anything else? Who knows? We'll really have to wait and see. But at the least, this will certainly push back any sort of negotiations and diplomacy with respect to the United States and Iran and their battle for the Strait of Hormuz. So that's going to be problematic as well. And one of the conditions for a ceasefire or for Iran to let go of the Strait of Hormuz is, of course, for Lebanon and Israel to kind of end their hostilities, or for Benjamin Netanyahu to kind of slow down his offensive in southern Lebanon and that entire buffer zone in Nebatia, which is about 45 miles south of Beirut, and the entire southern province, which Israel has created a security zone out of. They call it their own buffer zone for the security of their northern border, combating Hezbollah within that entirety of that region. So we'll talk about that. I think that's a big deal. Definitely not a good sign for the Middle East as a whole, and I'm sure the Gulf countries aren't happy to see that, because they're the ones who are banking on peace and really praying on peace. Rather, I should say praying. That's a more appropriate word for peace more than anybody else, because they're suffering as a result of this war directly. You know, a lot of countries are suffering indirectly. One can make the argument, the United States, of course, being a prime example, but these Gulf nations are suffering directly. And also, it's a national security issue, and they can't defend their airspace from Iranian aggression when the United States starts any sort of conflict within the Iranian coastline or inland Iran. So we'll talk about all of that, but this is definitely a bigger development than I think people are making it out to be. A lot of people don't even know this happened. But certainly, this is a big deal. And they killed 11 people, several of which whom were kids. So you have that as well. And there's nothing new there. Israel knows nothing about precision strikes when they want to take out one or two guys that they're concerned about or respond to some sort of aggression from Hezbollah, which was allegedly the reason this time. They just have to kill a bunch of people and drag them into the mess, even though they have the technology and the wherewithal to know that they can kill the people they're going for without actually taking out civilians as a result. But of course, we've seen Gaza, we've seen Lebanon. They have no capability of doing that, and quite frankly, they don't care to do it. So, you know, we'll talk about that. It's frustrating to see, but yeah, it's strikes around the southern district of Nebatia, like I said, 40 miles south of Beirut. And I think the specific provinces were Deir al-Zahrani as well as Ansar village. So we'll get into all of that, and it's going to be very interesting. Michaka, thank you so much for the 5. Appreciate that. We will also talk about this new propaganda. Wow, it's crazy. This new propaganda campaign from the UAE. I've been going down my X timeline, and it's been flooded with two things. It's been flooded with two things I've noticed, that not in my following tab, but on my For You tab. It's been flooded with two things specifically. One, I'm sure you all know, the Andrew Wilson and Candace Owens debate, Charlie Kirk, the whole situation. That's been a majority of my timeline. But the other thing that I don't know if you guys are seeing this, probably not, but I'm seeing so much intentional push from UAE content creators, political analysts, political commentators to go against the Muslim Brotherhood, but precisely any sort of Islamic extremism in the West. And I thought that was very interesting. And I think the timing is very interesting. So we'll talk about that. I have a tweet here from a prominent political personality from the United Arab Emirates. His name is Amjad Khalifa, and he says, "I'm not worried about Israel, I'm worried about Iran." Or actually, no, my apologies. He says here, you know what, we'll just pull up the tweet. He says, "My enemy isn't Israel. My main enemy is the Islamic Republic," and he's talking about Iran here. Okay, so I was right. "And those Muslim Brotherhood bastards." Simple as that. And at a time where Muslims are so fractured and there is this big fight between Iran and a Western power as well as Israel. And the United States and Israel, pretty much from a war-specific standpoint, have been unanimous or been synonymous in their aggression against Iran. And so I just think it's really interesting that of all the times, now he's choosing the time to condemn not only Iran, but the Muslim Brotherhood. And this comes as no surprise, as the UAE is an Israeli proxy. They're an Israeli buffer state. The UAE signed the Abraham Accords proposed by Trump in 2020. They are one of the first ones to hop on the Abraham Accords without any reluctance. At least Saudi Arabia is somewhat reluctant, although I do assume at some point in the next 4 or 5 years they will sign the Abraham Accords as well, unfortunately. And we could see Trump bribing them to do that with an offered nuclear program. And so they're going to join Bahrain, the UAE, Qatar, or not Qatar, I'm sorry, Morocco. Qatar is actually on the other side. Qatar represents an opposing axis to the UAE, and where they actually fund the Muslim Brotherhood and they fund and work with Saudi Arabia in some loose way to kind of counter-signal a lot of the UAE influence and or attempt for influence in the Middle Eastern / North African region. So we'll talk about that as well. I thought that was interesting timing. And then if we have time, we'll also get into, well, I'll ask you guys. I know a lot of you guys want to see some of the Andrew Wilson debate with Candace Owens. Man, that took over the weekend, didn't it? That took over the weekend. So if you guys want, we can react to some clips. I just assume a lot of you have seen it already, but I'd love to react to it. I don't mind. I just want to make sure we get all the news over with. So we'll talk about that. We'll look at Netanyahu's tweet. We will also talk about the Strait of Hormuz. We'll talk about Iran. And just to brief you guys on that situation, Iran still currently controls the Strait. I thought this was interesting. I don't know where this was sourced from, so you have to be careful with some of these tweets. But this is something I've been saying, so we'll talk about it, because if I've been saying it, that means it's true. No, I'm just kidding. But look, there's some legitimacy to this. This here reads, the Trump administration is actively discussing using nuclear weapons on Iran in strategy meetings, per former U.S. Congresswoman MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene. She says, yes, you read that correctly. It's real. I'm not speculating. I know our government is the one actually discussing lowering the nuclear threshold in order to use nuclear weapons against Iran, even though Trump claims he won the war like 40 times and says the U.S. controls the Strait of Hormuz. So I guess this was from an interview or a tweet of hers. And she's completely right. Trump is still walking around saying that we won the war. I mean, take a look at this here.
We're bringing the prices way down. Look at what's happening. Coming way down.
Well, you know what? I'll save it. We'll get into it in a second. But yeah, he spoke at the Nassau Police Academy graduation, which is in Long Island. So he spoke for an hour, not watching all that. I'm not reacting to that. That's crazy work. But we will see some clips. For what it's worth, I think some of the clips are funny. As per usual with all the Trump clips, a lot of them are really funny. So we'll talk about this. There's also some drama with Patrick Bet-David and Adam. What's new? I guess Jake Lang pressed Patrick Bet-David and Adam didn't stand up for him or something. I don't know. So we'll talk about it. But yeah, how you guys doing? Hopefully all of you are good. You know, slow news. Nothing crazy. Really no crazy news. Nothing crazy to talk about. I think the biggest thing that's happened in the last week is certainly the Candace Owens, Andrew Wilson debate. What are my thoughts on the debate? Well, I watched it. And I was going to stream it, but they decided to do it at 11 a.m. Okay, no sympathy for us employed people. That's fine. I still was able to watch a lot of it. I didn't get to see the beginning of it, but I'm told that I missed nothing because the beginning was just them semantically arguing about what an inference means and what establishing evidence means. And I don't know. They were kind of arguing about the debate instead of debating the substance. And I thought that was a lot of the debate. I thought a lot of the debate lacked substance. But either party, I thought, had their own good points. Look, I think Andrew Wilson brought up decent points when they rolled the clip of Candace saying, well, you know, I have full confidence that Israel and France are involved in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And then she didn't really give too much evidence, at least smoking gun, bombshell, groundbreaking evidence as to her claim. So I thought that was a win for Andrew. However, where Candace really took a tally in the opposing column was when she named all 7 charges, obviously. I think that was kind of some of the kill shot that a lot of people are talking about from the interview. And for what it's worth, I guess it makes sense, right? They're arguing about a high-profile political assassination. You should know the 7 charges. Maybe Andrew knew them. Maybe he didn't. It didn't seem like he did. He said murder. Candace was petty about it. She said no, it was aggravated murder. So who do I think won? People are going to say I'm coping. I really don't think. I feel like the audience lost. I felt like it was, we didn't get, I wanted to watch the debate. If you're somebody who's uninformed about either opposing side and the opinions, obviously you have the mainstream narrative. You have the government narrative, which is that this LGBTQ liberal Mormon kid got on a roof and shot Charlie Kirk in the neck. Okay, that's the mainstream narrative. And then you have the opposing alternate theories, and those go in many directions. Many of those alternate theories are ones that Candace Owens has entertained. I'm not saying she's confirmed many of them, but she has entertained many of them. You have the Egyptian plane angle. You have, and maybe they all coincide. Maybe they all amount to one larger claim. Maybe that's what she's been doing these last few months, or actually a year. It's been a year since Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Nearly in approximately 30 days, it will mark a year. Can you believe that? Time flies by us. And you have all these alternate theories. And so I think Andrew's goal going in was to get her to provide evidence that he felt there was a lack of from a lot of her coverage and other people in the space who align with her. You know, I will say, with the rhetoric and everything, it felt like Candace kind of edged over. I feel like she walked away with kind of the bragging points and the winning points. And I'll tell you why I think that. And that's just my personal opinion. I'll tell you why I think that. There were certain decisive moments in the debate where she made the right call. Meaning, when the charges were brought up, she knew exactly what the charges were. And I get it. That doesn't mean anything because that's not her making any credible argument or destroying any of his points or actually responding to him asking for the evidence. I get that. But we can look at the debate from 2 perspectives. We can look at it from a scientific debate bro perspective, which is claims, evidence, you know, all of that. And if that's the case, I think Andrew won. However, if I think we're talking about just somebody turning on the debate on their TV who's not really privy to all of this stuff and watching it for what it is, not having deep knowledge of the assassination and the story, the mainstream narrative, the alternate theories, all the details, all the evidence, all the legal documents, all the processing from the hearing, I think that that person may actually lean towards Candace's side. And look, we live in, how can I frame this? We live in a society now where nobody trusts anything that's mainstream. Whether the mainstream narrative or the mainstream juggle has any credibility or not, we live in a society where people have now corrected, and in some instances, I'll argue, overcorrected, being lied to by the government for decades. And so now everybody is always going to take the side of the person who has the alternate theory, and that is Candace Owens. That is these others in the space. So people ask me what I think, and, you know, I watched it once. Maybe I'll watch it again here if we have time. Maybe we'll watch it together, and, you know, you always see different things or notice something different when you watch a debate for the second time. Maybe I'll change my opinion, but I think Candace kind of walked away with some bragging points. I think Andrew brought up good points as well. I don't know if she substantiated a lot on her claims, and people are saying he was too technical, but it's true. Positive evidence does matter when you're making bold claims like that or suggesting or implying bold claims. And I feel like there was a lack of that. Now, here's the thing I don't see anybody talking about. Patrick Bet-David should have steered them back on course. There were many times where they were kind of debating about stuff that was unimportant to the actual facts and or the fact that Tyler Robinson was or was not a patsy, or for her to kind of substantiate evidence for her claims. I feel like they went in different directions. And this is what happens when two very opposing parties, two strong adversaries meet one another. You know, obviously, look, they showed respect. They weren't throwing ad homs from what I've seen, but they hate each other. No duh. Andrew Wilson is effectively calling Candace in some way a grifter or a crazy woman. And Candace Owens is accusing Andrew Wilson of being a paid TPUSA shill. So they obviously hate each other. I felt like Patrick Bet-David could have done a better job at least steering them back on course at certain points throughout the debate and reminding them of the substance so that we can get legitimate, intangible opinions and evidence from both parties. I feel like there was a lack of that. Was it good for popcorn and theater? I think so, absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. If somebody watched that who didn't know what was happening, who hasn't been keeping up with the case, who hasn't been watching the details, well, then I think that person was satisfied. But I think for anybody who really wanted to draw a conclusion and kind of pick the side, I felt like it was a little bit stale. But that's just my opinion. Maybe you guys disagree with that. I will say, I spent a lot of time on X after that debate. And these last few weeks, I've spent a lot of time. One thing I will say about the government narrative with respect to Charlie Kirk and his assassination, which is unbelievably a year ago. It's crazy how long it was. Is, I was watching the clip, and viewer discretion is advised. Obviously, a lot of us have seen the clip of Charlie Kirk being shot. It's no secret. It unfortunately surfaced everywhere online. And I say unfortunate because you got to think about Kirk's family. You got to think about his friends, his colleagues. They don't sit well. That doesn't sit in the stomach well, knowing that video exists online. But for the sake of evidence, I've watched that video numerous times. Or not the sake of evidence, but really drawing out a conclusion. Allegedly, it was a 30-06 round that hit him in the neck. We all know the lore about this, that the 30-06 round is a big round meant to take down large animals, whatever it is. And so people are arguing that the damage sustained on his neck was not, it just didn't match up with the profile of damage that we see from that same round hitting large moose or other animals that round is designated for, I suppose, right? I'm not a ballistics expert. But one thing that stuck out to me that was really weird, I spent like 20 minutes talking to Claude about this, was his shirt. That is one thing I must say is odd to me. Just his shirt like moving around the way it did, I thought that was weird. That's the only thing from the alternate theories that I think really sparks my interest. Everything else, not so much. And that's just because there's not enough details that are out yet about not only the government narrative, but the alternate theories don't have that much evidence as well. Now, with respect to Erica Kirk, I've never been a big fan of her actions after the assassination. I thought they were inappropriate. That's just my opinion. I'm not going to take another 10 minutes and attack her. I thought they were inappropriate. I thought that they were poorly timed, bad taste. I didn't like the TPUSA rally after. I didn't like Tucker Carlson talking. I thought it was way too much of a spectacle. And for what it was worth, people were right to be sussed out about everything after something like that. Because, I mean, this is one of the biggest political personalities in the United States, largely influential, has connections with the president of the United States. He's murdered in cold blood by allegedly from the mainstream narrative, the left. And TPUSA turns around, kind of turns the cheek. Erica Kirk says, I forgive him. And then they just like jump around celebrating. I never liked that. They acted as if though that didn't happen. I think that's inappropriate in times of sorrow and in times of grieving. People should be reluctant to make decisions quickly because those decisions will be made irrationally and out of emotion and clouded judgment because of how much despair they are going through from the circumstances that they just dealt with, which is the fact that Charlie Kirk was assassinated in cold blood on camera for millions to see, numerous times online, cycled over for months and months, and now it is going to be years after September of next month. So I thought it was inappropriate. I'm not the biggest fan of the way she's carried herself. Of course, she cannot run TPUSA. Nobody can fill his shoes. But I always thought to go back anyways, I always thought the shirt thing was weird. Because if you watch, and again, viewer discretion is advised, if you watch the clip, his shirt like does a lot of, so Andrew Wilson spoke about it. He says, it's air displacement. But upon further review, I guess when a bullet is zipping in the air, and correct me, I spoke to Claude about it, okay? I spoke to Claude about it, and I did a little bit of research. I was looking it up, that the air displacement would only be in front of the bullet, and it's marginal. It's not that much air displacement when a bullet is zipping through the air. And they have videos of bullets cutting through the air by like a heaping pile of powder and a balloon, and not a grain of the powder moves, and the balloons don't move at all. The balloons don't pop. They don't willow away from the air and the wind that is pushed upon it by the bullet. That doesn't happen. And so I thought it was weird. However, the argument or the way to conclude that is the force of the bullet. So allegedly when you fire a rifle, of course there's recoil, and the opposing side or the receiving end of that ammunition will feel a similar recoil to that of what you felt when you fired the rifle. But obviously that bullet is losing velocity in the air, and Kirk was shot from somewhere around 150 yards away. And so when that bullet hits his neck, and I know this is really visceral and I'm getting into the details, but I'm just trying to explain it, so my apologies. When the bullet strikes him, of course he's going to recoil himself or bounce, because that's carrying a lot of force. Obviously it's carrying the equal amount of force that a rifle would have, the butt of the gun would have, in the shoulder of the person who's firing the rifle. And so, it's got kick. It's a 30-06. I'm assuming it's not going to be a tiny little pop like a 9mm coming out of a Glock 19 or a larger handheld gun or a firearm, or sorry, a pistol. But he wasn't expecting it, obviously, so that's why maybe his body bounced like that and his shirt moved. Look, I'm just floating around what I thought made me a little bit sus of everything, but that's it. That's as far as it goes. The other theories have really yet to convince me, to be honest. But I look at all of them and I'm waiting for the trial. There were some pieces of evidence that were dropped in the hearing, but we haven't been able to see it. It's all just been alleged. It's all been he say, she say. So we're really going to have to wait for the trial. And, you know, once it's public, we'll see what we can work with from an evidence standpoint. And that goes for the government narrative. So, you know, it's just kind of the debate. The debate leaves you in a state of limbo, you know, because they're over here going over it and stuff. And yeah, Candace had a few gotchas, like I said. You know, I feel like she edged him over, but there wasn't like a moment in the debate where something was discussed and I said, oh, that's good. I got to look into that. Like, wow, that is groundbreaking. That's a bombshell. There's one thing in the beginning. Andrew Wilson, he spoke about how he had a text allegedly from TPUSA coming from Charlie Kirk, and where Kirk had, I don't know who it was that he texted, but Kirk had hinted and flirted with the fact that, you know, he was afraid he was going to be killed by the left. And so, you know, I pause in the chat for edged him over. I feel like she kind of walked away with more bragging rights. Maybe she won by a little bit. That's what I'm trying to say. And he had these alleged texts where, you know, Kirk was saying, oh, I feel like the left is trying to kill me. I just wish he showed them. That's all. I just wish he showed those texts, because those texts directly contradict Erica Kirk, because she had said previously, well, you know, no one was threatening to kill my husband, and he wasn't telling anybody that he was worried about his life. And so a lot of people have been talking about that. Now, Andrew is saying, now hang on, Andrew's saying he's going to show it on his show. He's going to show the text on his show whenever he goes live again. So I'm sure we'll see that clip surfaced all around Twitter and things like that. But yeah, I feel like marginally, slightly, Candace was able to walk away with some bragging rights or talking points and kind of prove him wrong on certain things, or stand her ground that she knew the case better than him. But I do think at the same time, you have to consider she didn't really provide the evidence that he came there and asked for. You know, he asked her for a lot of evidence, especially with the Israel angle, especially with the France angle, especially with these other angles that he brought up in all the alternate theories, and she didn't really have much evidence. She had no evidence, actually. You know, and that's the big thing that I was paying attention to and watching for as well, and she didn't have any of that. So like I said, it was more of a spectacle. It was more theatrical than anything else. And I think that's why everybody was kind of, a lot of people were happy. I think the Candace, and this is what it is, the Candace side was jumping up and down, very happy about the results of the debate, because they felt like she won. And this is what I'm saying, from a rhetoric perspective, from a gotcha moment, from a gotcha perspective, maybe it seemed like she had the better angle. But when it came to Andrew's side, they were a little bit more upset. And that's really just because there wasn't the substance that people were looking for. But I guess one can make the argument that they were just salty. So, you know, I went into it with an open mind. I just wanted to watch it for what it was. And I really didn't like walk away being satisfied or anything like that. And I didn't think that people would say Candace won as badly as she did, or Candace smoked him, until I went on X and I saw it. I thought it was, I really felt like there was no winner. But maybe I'm just a hater. You guys are going to call me a hater. Like I said, if I had to choose, then yeah. But, you know, so we can watch some of it. I'll get some clips, because it was by the way, 4-hour debate, very long. And to be honest, my opinion, it should have been structured. It should have been a debate where, you know, they had 5 minutes each, and, you know, they had their opening statements. I felt like it would have been better that way, because they would have really, when you're given 5 minutes to give your position, when you're given 5 minutes to give your response or your evidence or whatever it is that the topic at hand is, you have to be intentional with that time. And so you really got to get to what? The substance. That's the biggest thing about everything is, if they had timed rounds and it was moderated that way, I feel like there would have been a lot more urgency, or a sense of urgency, at least to get to the evidence, to get to the substance. And a lot of you may be saying, Riyadh, there was substance. No, there really wasn't. If you watch the debate, they really didn't go into details. At times they did. And right when they kind of got into details, it became an argument about a detail that turned into like semantics. And then Candace saying, well, what is an inference to you? And what does this mean to you? And what does that mean to me? And positive evidence this. And this is, and it was a lot of like Andrew saying, give me a fact. And it was a lot of Candace saying, well, I feel my opinion is. So if they had rounds, if they had a structure, if they had a little bit more of a specific topic rather than just debating the Charlie Kirk assassination, maybe then and then we'd actually have a little bit more to work with from the debate. But it was quite petty. So we can see some clips here. And I forgot when I was titling the video to put that in, so I'll put that in after. I have chats here, so don't worry, I'll read them. We'll get it. We'll go over this for a little bit, not too long, and then we'll get into Lebanon. But this is good stuff. I don't want to miss this, because if we cover this next stream, then it's just going to be like old news. It's already old news, bro. It's already old news. Let's see. Balkan Goy, happy Sunday. Happy Sunday to you, my friend. Enjoy. Hopefully you're having a good weekend. Unknown says the scholars in the UAE need to issue a fatwa against UAE. The ulama, yeah, they can never do that though, bro. They can never do. The scholars in the UAE need to issue a fatwa against the UAE and the government. That could never happen because the government in a lot of Gulf countries and their governments have a system set up specifically so that the scholars never oppose the government. Otherwise they go to jail. Otherwise they're threatened to be killed. Their life is threatened. Or their profession is threatened, their livelihood is threatened. You know, that right there, my friend, is what you call a free society. The UAE is not a free society. Saudi Arabia is not a free society. And so if you're a scholar and you speak against the governments in these Muslim countries, you will go to jail. You will be persecuted in the name of that law for that country. So they can't do that. You know, it's ideal, but they actually can't do that. And that's the same case for all of these Muslim countries, even Egypt, right? So Mr. Ferdinand said it was a 300K nothing burger. Also, yeah, the 300K, why did it have to be about money? That I think everybody can agree with me on. Why did it have to be? I don't think, I thought that we're arguing about, you know, a man who was killed in cold blood. That's Candace Owens' former very close friend and colleague and associate. I wouldn't accept the money if that was offered to me. I get it. I'm a nobody. Who am I? I thought that was a little inappropriate. I thought maybe the room should have been read better. I don't like that there was a 300K person at the table for stepping up to the debate. You know, especially since it's the first time I think somebody's like really challenged her publicly on a platform. Why not do that for free? For what it's worth, the live stream had 250,000 live viewers at one point. I think it was like 230, 240K people watching live. Nearly 250,000 people were watching live. How much money is she going to make from the AdSense? And then also the advertisement. She's going to make a lot of money. She's going to make a killing on that as well. There were like 3 or 4 advertisement breaks. So the 300K just, to me, it seemed like excessive. I don't, you know. It's just because it's about somebody who was assassinated. So it shouldn't be about that to me. But that's just me. Maybe you disagree. Let's see. Let's go. Islam beat Ian the Soy Garry. Yeah, Islam beat Hayes. Thank you so much for the 2. Appreciate that. Yeah. Shout out to Islam. Yo, bro, let me say this really quick for the UFC people, and then we'll get into the debate. These people crying and complaining about these Dagestani wrestlers. Okay, last time I checked, it's mixed martial arts. It's not one MA. It's not one martial arts. It's not 2 MA. It's not 2 martial arts. It's everything. So when you step into the cage and your opponent out wrestles you and out controls you and holds you up against the cage, I get it. Is it theatrical? Is it fun to watch? Does it have you on the edge of your seat? Of course not, but it is fighting. And those are well-earned and well-deserved points. I have to admit, I was watching the fight. I wasn't thoroughly entertained. I wasn't ecstatic. The best part of the fight is when he kicked him in the head and then took him down after. I think that's what everybody thinks the highlight of the fight is. That's what everybody is talking about. That was the best sequence. However, just because the fight was boring doesn't mean Islam didn't win. I see people saying Ian Garry won. It was 2-2 going into the 5th. What fight did you fucking watch? That was 4-0. That was 4-1. I give 1 round to Ian Garry. Maybe I need to watch it again. But I watched that fight, and to me, Islam had the clear edge. Now, I will admit he was banged up. He had some bruises. He had some marks. And maybe that's because Garry was getting him with that jab, and getting him in the pocket when he was on the ground. But Islam controlled him for a majority of the fight. So I get it. The cage riding is boring. It is. But people are like so salty. Oh, Ian Lawson. How about you guys get behind a fighter who can fucking wrestle? Always bitching and I'm tired of it. Always bitching and moaning about some fighter getting controlled. Tell your nigga to stop getting controlled then. Tell your fighter to stop getting controlled. Getting thrown on the ground, and I get it, there's no submission, but he's holding him against the cage. Tell him to get out of that position. Everybody's crying, Islam's boring, Islam. Bro, it doesn't matter. He won, you fucking loser. He fucking won. Okay, and that's the thing too. He won. So all of you niggas bitching and moaning, he didn't win, you look like a sore loser. He literally won. He controlled the whole fight. So, you know, if you're an Ian Garry fan, wah. Unless you accept that he lost. Now, if you say, hey, now if you come to me with some sense, if you come to me with some logic and you say, I thought it was a boring fight, I don't like watching the Dagestanis wrestle, fair enough. A lot of people want to see, but this is like, I appreciate fighting. I don't mind seeing wrestling because that's a necessary element of fighting. Is fighting just punching? Is fighting just kicking? No, it's also wrestling and grappling and slamming and choking. Okay, Islam and Khabib and the others excel at that. You can blame them, you cannot blame them, whatever it is. They're good at that, and they're so good at that, they can leverage that and exploit that out of every single fighter who's not good at it and not lose for 10 years straight like Islam hasn't lost for 10 years straight. So either you guys tell one of these fighters to learn how to fucking wrestle, or Islam is going to keep steamrolling. It's like, bro, losers, loser mentality. Pussy mentality. He got controlled on the kick. If Islam lost that way, I'd have said he got his ass whooped. It's too bad. It is too bad. Everybody wants to see a fight that looks like Ilya Gaethje. It's not going to always look like that. It's going to be boring sometimes. Yeah, it's not good for Dana's pockets, I'm sure. But that's what the fight game is. Some fights are boring. Oh, put on for the fans. Bro, he's putting on for you by cutting weight, stepping into the octagon, and then risking his life. He has to also get CTE and brawl back every 10 seconds. Why does he need to do that? He's already risking his life. He's getting in the cage naked. This is like modern day gladiator sport. Imagine you get into a cage with millions of people watching you. You have nothing except trunks on, and your job is to almost kill the person in front of you before the ref stops the fight. Should you then seek to entertain the people who are watching the fight even further by risking your life by standing in front of him with your hands down and taking punches and dishing punches until the better man stands and the worst one falls? I think that's so stupid. Like, bro, he has a record to protect. He has a legacy to uphold. He's going to get smacked around and punched and kicked so you can be entertained. By the way, Islam has had entertaining fights. Him and Dustin was a great fight. JDM was pretty boring. The Volkanovski fights, Islam has had entertaining fights. Oliveira. You niggas better be happy Khabib's not in the UFC anymore. You think Islam's boring. Khabib was even worse. Khabib didn't punch or kick at all. So, and by the way, people are going to say, oh, he's biased. I'm really not. I don't give a fuck if one of these Muslim fighters loses. At the end of the day, I still have to go to work and be a broke goy. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just saying the bitching and moaning about a loser is like, bro, tell Ian Garry to get in the wrestling gym. Tell him to go to Dagestan for a couple years. Figure out how to keep Islam off of you. He's so much taller. He's so much longer. Use your range. Kick him. I don't know. Anyways, a bit of a Matrix moment, but that had me like so mad, bro. Bitching and moaning. Thursday, Islam lost. It's like, bro, you guys are coping. God. This is like the fifth time it's happened. Anyways, all right. Oh, it says Light Skin Groiper says the whole debate was a complete waste of time. Thank you for the 20. For any serious truth seekers, neither party gained any real ground, and we were left more confused than before. Unfortunately, this is all we're going to get. W Riyadh, Wire, and W Nick. Thank you. Yeah. Look, it was pretty boring. It was pretty boring. We didn't get much out of it, but we got the theatrics out of it. So if you want to sit and eat your popcorn, you got that part. Sagnos, right? I believe the microphone theory. If you see Candace's car pics in the story about the shirt, it seems obvious. Who do we know that rigs small equipment? Yeah, it's an Israeli thing. I know that. I know that. Look, like I said, I'm not here to shoot down any theories. I just want evidence. And I've seen some of the evidence. It's not groundbreaking. And you also have to consider, like, If Kirk was murdered with a mic and Tyler Robinson or somebody else, an alternate shooter, didn't get him in the neck, like let's say he was actually killed with a mic or a remote explosive similar to that of what we saw with the pagers in Hezbollah, in southern Lebanon against Hezbollah, then why wouldn't the defense suggest that? Obviously, Tyler Robinson's team would jump to kind of entertain some of these alternate theories if he was in fact killed by an exploding mic. I will say the way the shirt moved was weird. I'm not going to lie. I watched the clip a lot. And even from the front, it's not as weird. If you see the angle and where he was shot from the side, so you can see him like this. Like the shirt pops out this far. And like I said, the force of the bullet is considerable because the recoil you feel firing the rifle is the same recoil that the receiving party would feel in getting shot upon impact, except they're not bracing for it. You are. So of course he's going to recoil, not to be insensitive and like reenact it, but of course he's going to recoil. The question is of the shirt. Like, does the shirt bounce that much? Somebody actually did the test. They put a shirt on gel ballistics or whatever, gel ballistics armor, whatever you call it. And the shirt did ring around like that, but the gel body, the gel ballistics body was not firmly planted to the ground. So it wasn't like a legitimate, test. So they didn't recreate the situation correctly. So I don't know, like I said, I'm up in the air on that. That is, I get why people think that. But, to me, it still doesn't have enough evidence. And people demonize me for that. I'm sorry. I'm not convinced. So let me see. OSS Lightskin said, by the way, shout out to you, Sagno Spray. Good to see you. OSS Lightskin says, I don't watch UFC like that, but training to fight should be a basic discipline for men. If you take security of your family serious, you should primarily conceal carry, though. Yeah, men should train in the fighting gym. I agree. Maybe I got to get into a fighting gym. Conceal carry is huge, too. Here's the thing about conceal carry, though. A lot of people are not smart enough to conceal carry. That's the truth. Like, I've found that out. I have realized that over time. Like, a lot of people don't have the emotional stability, and a lot of people don't have correct judgment and or discernment to conceal carry. What do I mean? When you conceal carry, you have to think twice about where you're going and where you'll end up. You really do. It's almost the case that you're better off, and it's going to sound backwards. But let me explain this in detail. It's almost the case where you're better off being in a dangerous situation without your gun than being in a dangerous situation with one. Why? The gun carries a big liability. And so people would propose the argument, oh, rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. Fair enough. But a lot of people would end up in a situation where they'd be forced to use the firearm, and then they'd go, I was forced to use the firearm. But why were you in that situation? Too many times and too often, people discharge their weapons and have to gravely injure, if not kill somebody who is threatening their life. But it's because they decided to go get snacks at the gas station at 2 a.m. And it's like, okay, and I'm not, look, we live in a free country. We live in a society that should be safe, but it's not safe. Let's be real with ourselves. We don't live in a safe society in the United States. A lot of you don't live in safe cities. Maybe your city is safe for the most part, but after a certain hour of the night, after a certain time, after a certain threshold within certain neighborhoods, you're not safe anymore. So you have to have good judgment to carry a weapon. You really do. There's things I used to do without my gun that I don't do with my gun, because now I know if I do those things with my gun, there's a good chance I'll pull my gun out. Right? Or at least the likelihood is significantly higher. So I never go to bad areas. I honestly just try to stay inside at nighttime. If I'm outside at nighttime, I'm in populated areas. I stay out of places where homeless people will approach me and these weird people on the streets will approach me. If I go for a walk, I try to go for a walk in the daytime. Sometimes I'm guilty. I go for a late night walk as well. So I'm not saying you should be scared and stay inside, but I'm also saying exercise some caution and understand the situations that will increase the likelihood of you having to discharge your firearm, in which you will likely be tried for manslaughter if you do, especially if you live in the Northeast or any of these blue states. That's just the truth. Here in Connecticut, God forbid, if you ever have to defend yourself, you're in a lot of trouble, even if somebody breaks into your home, by the way. So you got to know the law of your state. Maybe if you live in Florida or Texas or Georgia or a state like that, this advice doesn't apply to you. I should have said that at the beginning. So a lot of people aren't smart enough, And you should bring your gun everywhere. But there's certain places that if you have your gun, it can prove to be a liability. And it's, again, you'd rather defend yourself than and save your life than have to fight a, long court case. Or rather, what I'm trying to say is it's better to have to defend yourself and then stand in front of a judge. But if you just choose the right situations and predicaments to end up in, you can avoid all of that together. Because people get guns. You see these memes, people get guns and they're like, yeah, I'm itching for a nigga to try me. Niggas get guns. And I see like the memes on Instagram, they're funny, but niggas get guns and they walk around thinking like they're powerful. I'm like, yeah, I'm itching for a nigga to try me. And it's like, no, that's exactly what you shouldn't do with the gun. Because if a nigga tries you, you're going to have to kill him. And now you're facing years in prison. Like, it's not smart, So it's just a lot of people aren't smart enough to own a gun. It's that simple. You should get one. I'm assuming you're smart if you're watching this. So you should get your concealed carry weapons permit. But if you're dumb, and you know you're dumb, maybe refrain. Because it'll prove to be a liability more than a safety measure. That's what I really want to say. Unknown says the UAE have committed kufr. It's haq to rebel. Yeah, I mean, in some aspects they have. Yeah, they absolutely have. They're killing Muslims in Sudan. So yeah, I think that's valid grounds for kufr. Primarily, OSS Lightskin says, primarily, I sound like Candace now, my black side coming out. What did you put earlier? Should primarily conceal carry, though. Oh, it's okay. It's okay. That's a typo we walk over. We don't worry about that. It's not that big of a deal. Julian says, Riyadh, keep killing. I'm 22. I have a 20K emergency fund, single, fit, and still live with my parents. And I feel like it stunts my growth. When should I move? This is a good question. Because I just dealt with this. There's two ways to look at it. Really, honestly speaking. I moved out of the house even though I didn't need to because I felt like it would help me grow. And it has. It's worked on the positive for me. Now, do I pay rent? Yeah, that takes a big chunk of change out of my account every month. But I wanted to be independent. And you just hit a point in your 20s where it naturally hits you that you want to be independent. It's like this craving that comes out of nowhere. However, if you plan on saving your money and investing or doing something with it, stay home. If you have a plan. Now, are you ever going to save your way to being rich? No. You're going to have to make your money work for you. And you're going to have to figure out how that money can work for you in order for you to achieve cash flow every month, recurring revenue. Whatever that is, an online business model, whatever it may be. I don't know. Anything like that. You have a good emergency fund. 20K is really good. And keep adding to it if you can. Slowly but surely, right? But I would say that, if you feel like you want to be alone, you know yourself better than me, man. If you feel like you want to be alone, you can. There's nothing wrong with living with your parents in your late 20s, though. If your parents don't mind it and they don't encroach on your lifestyle and they're not banging down your door and bothering you and pissing you off, you got it good where you are. Maybe don't leave. But if you have this itch that you need to leave and be on your own in a city and do it yourself, and you feel like that will light a fire under your ass, maybe go ahead. But then again, the fire should be lit under your ass regardless of your situation, right? But sometimes that added financial pressure does actually squeeze that last bit of juice out of somebody to get them where they need to go. So either option is not a bad idea. But if I had to say, I'd say stay home, man. Stay home. You're 22. I moved out at 23, to be fair. But nothing wrong with being home until you're 25. I'd say revisit the situation at 25. Stay home for another 2 or 3 years. If it stunts your growth in what ways? Is your mom cooking for you and doing laundry? Tell her stop doing that. Do it yourself. Try to gain some independency. But then again, leverage that. That's saved time for you. You don't have to cook. You don't have to do laundry. I don't know what the situation is, but if your parents are saving time and stepping in for you and doing things for you, leverage that for your own good. That's freed up time for you to get more money, to work another job, to figure something else out, whatever that is. That's more time. That's precious time. That, trust me, feels like a waste when you're on your own. You know how annoying it is for me to do laundry? So, honestly, leverage it. Leverage it. But that's a question you will ultimately have to ask yourself. Both options, both paths are not terrible ideas. But if I had to lean one way, and I apologize for not being decisive or giving you an ultimate answer, but I don't know your situation specifically or intimately. If I had to lean in one direction, I would say stay home. Stay home for a year or two and Create more streams of, you know what it is? Create a stream of income, or create more avenues of income to where moving out is like a non-thought. And maybe that's your situation, right? Get more money, get so much money to the point where rent is negligible. Or get a house. My brother would say get a house. Right now, I don't know. Tough time to get a crib, I'm not going to lie. Really bad time. Actually, not tough. It's a fucking terrible time to buy a house. But nonetheless, it's an asset. Despite the interest, after a long enough period of time, it will be an asset. But renting right now makes more sense than it did before. Renting right now makes more sense just because interest rates are inexcusable. You cannot define them. You cannot defend them. So, it's tough. Many ways to go, man. Many ways to go. I say stay home, bro. Stay home. After the yap, stay home. But I have no context, so... Am I looking for clippers? Yeah, yo, listen. I'll say this before we get into the debate. If you want a clip for me, feel free to. I got a couple clippers on TikTok. I've seen their clips. I follow them, and I like their videos. And if you clip for me, I'll push your clipping page. So we'll do that. When there's more people in here, I'll push the clippers pages. But feel free to clip for me, yeah. If you want, reach out to me on X in the DM. Instagram there's too many DMs. I can't keep up with them. Reach out to me on X in the DM and tell me your page and stuff, and I'll plug it on stream and stuff so I can get you a kickstart and make sure people follow you. I'll do the best that I can with the little audience that I have. So let me know, and I will meet you halfway, because that's a big service to me and I appreciate it. All right, and it can make you money too, depending on what platform you clip on. So, especially if I get on Kick. So save that, put it in your back pocket. We'll revisit that conversation when I'm on Kick. I'll definitely have more of an incentive for you guys. But if you want to clip for the love of the game, no objections from my end. But anyways, so here, look, I just popped in Candace. I can't talk today. Candace Owens, Andrew Wilson, debating. Maybe I'm a little dehydrated. I need some water. We'll look at some of these clips. Some of these went viral. And then we will get into the news. So let's see here. And this is what I was talking about.
If you think
the evidence part, I thought was relatively powerful. And maybe we'll just have to, you know what, chat? We'll just watch the damn debate. We'll just watch. We'll just go straight to it and skip around instead of me scavenging X for clips. That's stupid.
See that too.
So
we're forthcoming with that, and they had said, hey, yeah, Charlie was starting to ask questions. I think after October 7th, it's reasonable that people are starting to re-examine our relationship with Israel. We wouldn't be here today. But it has been lie after lie after lie, debunk after debunk after debunk. Yes, I did share that I had a dream that Charlie was betrayed. It's not a dream anymore. It's a reality. I look at what the organization has become, the people that they are partnering with, the lies that they are telling, the extraordinary people that they're sending out to say that I hadn't speak to Charlie since 2018, and it begins to look like a conspiracy. And just as a historical fact, that entire term was created by the CIA to gaslight people after the assassination of JFK. So it's not exactly one that makes me nervous. Like calling somebody a conspiracy theorist is essentially saying that they demand further answers and they're not accepting the Fed slop. So I'm grateful that you came today. I don't.
And here's a clip that I wanted to go over. So this is powerful, and I'll bring up Candace's W as well. So don't worry, I'm not going to be unfair here. But I thought this was powerful. So they brought up a clip, and I guess she didn't know they were going to bring up clips, but that's fair game.
Erica's complicit. If you guys want to play that video.
Yeah. Could also just ask.
And so right now, their guys are going out and they're going to look for evidence. And then by May, which is fortunately around the corner, then she'll see what they found. So what the F is that performance? How could you sit up there and say, yes, I 100% believe Tyler Robinson did it? That right there is why it is impossible for me to think that Erica Kirk is not complicit somehow. Because
those two thoughts actually don't even follow. How would it be the case that even if Erica Kirk did believe that Tyler Robinson was 100% responsible for the death of Charlie Kirk, let's just say she believed it with every fiber of her being, believed all the evidence, because she did. She just actually did. Would it then follow that somehow she's complicit in his death?
I didn't say complicit in death. You added those two words.
Okay, so what's she complicit in?
Yes. So sowing this narrative that Tyler Robinson is guilty. So you're chopping up clips. Like I said, you didn't have the
Well, I mean, okay. To be fair, that's definitely what you meant, right? Complicit in what? Obviously the assassination. There's nothing else to be complicit in. I don't understand what else. It's implied, of course, without having to be said. It's a given.
confidence.
Okay, well, tell me,
So
what does
now
that
you're
mean?
chopping
What
it
does
up.
complicit mean?
We are showing a clip of her on Barry Weiss, which I can't remember the date that she did that interview. And Erica, when she is asked, "Are you one? You know, do you feel with 100% certainty that Tyler Robinson did this?" And she says, "I do." Then again, context matters. I sit down with Erica for 4 hours under the assumption that she had some evidence, right? Like I'm like, this is why I did not engage in any like Erica, everyone's questioning what she's wearing and all this stuff. I was like, I'm going to wait here because I don't know, just it feels weird to think that, did I think that some of her mannerisms were weird and stuff like that? Yeah.
Look, I'll say, like, okay, her believing the mainstream narrative, I don't know, makes her complicit in the assassination. I think that's an asinine thing to say. However, I think her behaviors are very weird. Her behaviors are very weird. Her actions, her principles after the assassination, how at times it almost seemed like she was fake crying. And that's what everybody's talking about. That was weird. And anybody who's honest will mention that. You know, so no doubt about it. I thought that, and I don't want to say she moved on too quickly. And by the way, everybody grieves differently. Look, everybody grieves differently. Some people grieve by trying to move on and distract themselves. Some people grieve by being ridden in bed for weeks, or, you know, being home, being alone, being with a certain person. I don't know. But I felt like the Spectacle, Turning Point USA, WWE, SmackDown, Raw, you know, sparkler, firework, TPUSA events, I didn't like that. I thought that was inappropriate. And also just the fact that they took over his setup so quickly and started doing shows and segments, and I thought it was all inappropriate. I thought it was very insensitive. So I will always hold TP or Erica kind of accountable on that. And you can frame that from whatever direction you want, whether it's that they're in on it or they're not. Regardless of any of that, I just think from moral, from principle, from that standpoint, I thought that it wasn't right.
Yeah, but that's not, you can't convict somebody on weird mannerisms. And then when I sat down with her and I was
and that's why I didn't convict her. Her mannerisms are weird, but I'm not saying she's behind it. And so Candace is echoing the same thing here.
expecting
But I want to find the clip where they talk about Israel, but I'll find that in a moment. We can watch this.
for her to say, well, you know, I'm obviously the victim on the case and we got to see the shot, you know, taken or this or that, whatever it is. Great. You know, that's why she has that much confidence 2 months ago. And when I sat down with her, it was nothing. It was nothing. Okay. So this is a conversation.
How would that make her complicit?
Complicit. And again, you said complicit in the death of Charlie Kirk.
Complicit in what? Yeah.
Well, if you let me finish my sentence, I could tell you that. But my point being is that then you take a look at this and you go, okay, well, this is weird. Why would you have this confidence? And then when you sit across from somebody and you say, okay, great, I want to go out there and defend you now. I want people to know that you can't say this stuff publicly, but you know more things. And she just blanks. And then she says, well, I'm going to call the lawyer. And she called the lawyer. Again, all of this is on my show. So out of context clips is not going to work because I know what I say on my show. Okay. So we call her lawyer and her lawyer says to us, she calls him on the phone, pardon me. And it's me, her, and Justin Strife. And I'm like, okay, great. What do you guys have? He goes, well, we don't have anything yet. We're not at that phase yet. And I'm like, well, what do you mean you don't have anything? And he says, well, don't you know how it works? It's a probable cause hearing. So basically the state says that they're going to bring this forward. And now our people go out and they look for the evidence to assert that Tyler Robinson is guilty. And so I asked her directly, her lawyer directly, the phone's in between us. I'm like, wait, so just so I'm clear, you haven't seen anything that the public hasn't seen? And he says, no. So I'm going back in my head and I'm going, okay, so why is Erica saying with such a degree of certainty, like she was sent out to convince the public and people bit, by the way. I remember even Megyn Kelly was like, let's wait. She's going to have.
Yeah, but we shouldn't demonize the idea of waiting, because if we wait long enough, we will be met with an answer. Like we're going to be given the truth. The truth will prevail after some certain period of time, however long it may be. The trial should be at the end of this year, but waiting confirms that we won't speculate anything that's shot down in the face of the truth later if it is potentially revealed. There's certain things the state has that has not been revealed to us yet. And even in the probable cause hearing, there hasn't been anything that's groundbreaking necessarily, but there have been some points to support the mainstream narrative instead of the alternate ones, which everybody knew would happen. So, I mean, I think the fact that Erica is waiting doesn't mean she's complicit in his death. I just think that she's simply waiting. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but saying that she's, and even Candace kind of walked it back and said, I never said she was complicit in his death. I just said she was complicit. But if she's complicit in the investigation that to Candace is taking too long, what would necessarily follow is you're saying she's complicit in his assassination, in the case of his assassination, i.e. his death. So that is kind of what she's saying, right? But she's taking it back and explaining it here. And this is what I mean, like maybe Patrick Bet-David can step in here and kind of, and it's hard. There's 250,000 people watching. So it's hard. You're hesitant to step in. You don't want to ruin the moment, because then say Patrick Bet-David does too much stepping in, and then it's like now everybody's shitting on him and saying he ruined the debate. I'm sure he doesn't want to be the guy to ruin this generational debate, because this is the biggest debate of the year. So I think both of these things exist at the same time. I think both things follow. I don't know if there's this big issue with her waiting necessarily. I think what's more sus about Erica is the fact that the bitch didn't seem sad about anything. That's to me, that's what was weird. And everybody grieves differently, so maybe she just doesn't grieve that way. I don't know, but to me, it just didn't give me grieving widow-like symptoms when she was coming to the media, and and I get it, you got to show a strong face, and she tried to do that holding the cross out the window, the crucifix, that was his necklace, I think. There were moments that were just a little weird to me, that's all. And I think everybody can agree with that. And if you go back, I covered that on live like 3 months ago.
Access to things. I did think she had access to things that we didn't have. Why express that confidence to the public as opposed to just being like, we don't know yet. I feel confident he's involved. They made an arrest.
I don't understand. How would any of this make her complicit and in what?
Well, I've already told you. She's complicit in trying to fool the public into thinking this is some open and shut case.
How's she trying to fool the public in?
Yeah, it's crazy to say she was trying to fool the public. I don't think she's doing anything except showing a good face and not being sad enough about what had actually happened. I just think that's the problem for me. The public is free to engage in any opinion and or theory that they desire, and the most popular theory is that somebody else other than Tyler Robinson shot Charlie Kirk. That's the mainstream narrative. The government, this is how I'll actually frame it instead of the way I've been saying it this entire show. The government narrative is that Tyler Robinson shot Charlie Kirk, but the mainstream narrative certainly isn't. I think more than half of the people who are following this case believe something sinister happened here. So I don't know if she's really trying to fool the public or she's been strong in that. She's just answering questions based on what the government narrative is and what the current charges are. And she's saying things like, I forgive him. That's weird. Why would you say I forgive him? I don't give a fuck. How many cheeks do we have left to turn? To me, that's weird. Okay, the whole I forgive him and this this speech, that's the stuff you should be attacking. And I'm sure Candace attacked that, but that's really where the issue lies, not giving weight to the government narrative. I think that I don't know if there's as deep of an issue there as she's making it out to be.
Into this, if she believes
don't look
if
anywhere
she believes
else.
that Tyler Robinson killed Kirk, if she believes that, how would that be complicit in anything?
I do.
Are you saying that you think she doesn't believe it?
I don't believe that at that stage she sat down with Barry Weiss that's what she believes. No, but that's my opinion.
Right, but so when you just say complicit,
so she's suggesting that Erica knows there's something else to the story. All right, maybe we'll see later in the future. She comes out and says, "I knew it was never Tyler Robinson, but I had to hush." But that's the only way she'll be vindicated here. She's saying that I guess she's suggesting that Erica knows the government narrative in the Tyler Robinson shooting was bullshit.
If she
we'll read that again there. We'll watch that again.
Believes that Tyler Robinson killed Kirk. If she believes that, how would that be complicit in anything?
I do.
Are you saying that you think she doesn't believe it?
I don't believe that at that stage she sat down with Barry Weiss that's what she believes. No, but that's my opinion.
Right. But so when you just say complicit, you just mean she believes that Tyler Robinson killed Kirk? That's it?
That's what we were talking about. That's why I said if your strategy was to dice up clips and take it out of context and make it seem like I said she was complicit.
Everything.
It's not okay. I don't know if that was taken out of context. It was exact. Barry Weiss has nothing to do with anything. That wasn't out of context.
Yeah, but then why not just play the full thing? Like why?
Because we don't have like infinite amounts of time. I'm guessing you probably don't want to watch.
Well, I'm going to go back.
So there was that. Let's see what else is there. And by the way, I see this chat in here. Hang on. Julian says, "Oh, you do your own laundry, and even pay them $700 a month. Depends how much rent is in your area. If rent is like $1,500, maybe $2K in your area, then you can go for it. Why not? But you know, if you live in an area that rent is like $3K on average or something like that, then maybe steer clear of that. That would be my opinion. But you're already paying rent there. You've already built some sort of responsibility and competency. So if that's the case, then maybe you're good, man. Maybe you're good to move out. Let's see. Let's get the clip of her knowing the charges. That was kind of bad. Let's see.
Too retarded to kill her husband.
Yeah.
Would you like to explain?
Here, we'll watch this clip really quick. Actually, first.
Yeah.
Would you like to explain how you developed your evidence, your positive evidence for the fact that Erica was retarded?
Yeah, sure. So
Yeah.
I just think all women are retarded.
Oh, so you're allowed to just say stuff. Who knew? So
You
and what
just
and by
asked
the way,
me.
and
Like,
what dramatically transformed your opinion of Erica after going to the headquarters? Because you were pretty hostile about.
I wasn't hostile towards them.
You don't think calling somebody too retarded?
No,
Is
come on. That's like normal tongue-in-cheek stuff for me online.
Oh, you're being tongue in cheek.
Usually when I call someone retarded, I'm being tongue-in-cheek, yeah. Like, for instance, you got supporters. I mean, if you want to use the same exact argument, you would take a supporter like Owen Benjamin. He called you bad names and called your husband bad names. You're just like, well, that's no biggie?
I've never answered him on anything that he said. I'm saying that you now are her biggest defender. So do you still think
I'm
she's
not
too,
her biggest defender.
Do you still think she's too retarded?
No. I didn't know Erica Kirk. I'd never met her before.
Okay, but you had an issue with.
See, and at this moment, this is where Patrick Bet-David should have actually stepped in and said, guys, let's talk about the issue at hand. Like, what is this Erica Kirk is or isn't retarded, women are retarded kind of thing? This is really drawing away from the debate. Like, this is taking away good potential substance. So this is the shit that frustrated me.
Turning Point being led by a bunch of fembots talking about
Still
the
do.
feminist angle.
Still do.
And then suddenly you go to the
Still think
headquarters.
it's a terrible idea.
You go into the headquarters. Now all of a sudden
And so she's suggesting that he's paid by TPUSA here, by the way.
you've got text messages that you're sharing with them. You say that you and your wife are getting involved with management.
No. I'm not involved in any management at Turning Point
Well,
USA.
I'm pretty sure there is a clip of you where you say that your wife went to their recent conference and sat down. And then when you were on Joe Rogan.
No. Hang on. I'll explain what happened just so that you understand.
Yeah.
So I was invited there to do some debate training. That's literally what I was invited there to do on recommendation. So I went down and did some debate. That's the first time I ever met anybody at TPUSA.
Okay. And then you said you sat down with Erica.
Well, I didn't sit down to her. I talked to her in a hallway.
So you didn't sit down and speak with Erica?
No, I didn't have like some sit down long conversation. We talked in a hallway.
Okay. Is
I
that
don't
when
know,
you gave her
maybe-
the hug?
Yeah, gave her the hug right there. My wife did too. We were both very sorry for what happened.
Okay.
to
So
her.
at what point did you start receiving text messages from that you cited in your opening statement?
Oh,
that
I
you-
just reached out to TPUSA and said, I'm prepping for a debate. Is there anything that's pertinent that I can use here?
Do you find it interesting that people have been asking for, basic answers to questions, and you're saying that you walked into their headquarters and reached out and they instantly...
It's amazing, isn't it? If you reach out in good faith and you're not demonizing them and saying that they're complicit in the murder of people's deaths, that perhaps they're actually willing to...
Yeah, and the thing about TPUSA is if this nigga Kirk, or sorry, not Kirk, if this nigga Robinson is actually convicted after this trial, they are going to come after Candace crazy. They are going to try and sue the shit out of her. So that's something as well. Because Andrew is here, he's saying, if you don't go and suggest that the organization is complicit in the murder or behind the murder, maybe they'd invite you over too. Which does make sense, I guess, but that's just some food for thought. If this pans out the way it likely will, because I'm pretty sure, regardless of what you think, right, conspiracy theory or not, I'm guessing he's going to be charged with the murder. And if he is, they're going to try and come for Candace very hard, very aggressively. So, I mean, because there's no doubt this entire thing, and I'm not saying she's acting in bad will, but this entire thing has been lucrative for her, and they're paying attention to that. She's caught a massive amount of attention since the Charlie Kirk assassination, and as a result, she's done long-winded streams, covered different theories, given weight to certain theories as opposed to others, but really, as a whole, shot down the government narrative and the fact that Tyler Robinson did it, and at times suggested that maybe Israel was involved or France was involved, which is one thing, but then suggesting that TPUSA was complicit or even potentially kind of behind it and or involved in supporting the assassination. So if he's convicted, they're going to sue the fucking living shit out of her.
Release things to you that are pertinent, other than thinking that, perhaps you're diabolical.
Well, I don't know. I just
and
think I feel like
intentions.
if I was going to release that information, I didn't demand that it be released to me. I actually never demanded that it be released. I just simply said that this is what was going on in the last 48 hours. Maybe to the media they could release it. They could release it to PBD. They decided to release it to a guy that called Erica too retarded in June.
So what?
Yeah, I just think it kind of shows that Turning Point is sending you as their horse.
Well, I don't know
They
where
just don't have the courage to have the conversation.
Like, I don't
if they
see
were
this.
just releasing something in good faith to answer questions.
Do you have any
I've never
evidence
demanded
of that claim?
it's not evidence that
No?
you're sharing your
And so this is what I'm saying when they're on two different fields, or, they're coming from two different places. Candace is saying, if you have X and Y, what must necessarily follow a Z? And Andrew is saying, no, you have to prove that Z comes next. So it's two different frameworks. It's two different real minds and or styles of debate coming together and going against one another when it comes to the evidence and or the opinions. And that's the problem. They're like on two different playing fields the entire time. Andrew's looking for hard, solid evidence. Andrew's looking for bombshell, groundbreaking developments. And Candace is saying, well, let's just think about it, right? If this happened and this happened, then this is what must necessarily follow. And that's not always the most structured way of going about it, in my opinion. I think evidence is a lot more suitable. Evidence is a lot more reliable. Because it can be the case that, we can suggest something from an opinion, or we can say that this is what must necessarily follow. I think that's fair. We do that in the Middle East all the time with our coverage. But, when it comes to a specific high-profile political assassination, you do have to be careful with doing those kinds of things. Because things may seem one way on the surface, but they're really not that way when you uncover the evidence. And this is because I watch my brother's true crime. My brother used to work for the government. Like, you do have to be careful with these kinds of things in these cases, because things can pan out in a way that you would never expect. So the speculative behavior can sometimes reward you and it can sometimes punish you. That's all I'm saying. Sometimes there's a consequence at the end of that road. And we'll only find out after the trial is over, but that's if even people believe in the trial. And that's me for myself as well. I want to see good evidence. And I'm yet to see that with the mainstream narrative, by the way. There are certain holes in the mainstream narrative, no doubt about it, or the government narrative. But this is what I'm saying when I say they're operating from two different ideologies. And this is where Patrick Bet-David really needs to get them on this. And this is why I said it should have been an organized debate with 5-minute rounds or something like that. So they were seeing eye to eye. They never really saw eye to eye. Not in terms of agreement, but in terms of the framework for the debate, the premise of their questioning. You know what I mean?
That she's too retarded. I can't share my opinion. That I think it's going to register as really obvious to the public. That rather than presenting that throughout the course of everybody wanting to know what Charlie was going through his last days, they decided to give it to you to come to my house as some sort of a surprise.
Well,
do you think the public's not smart enough to see through that?
Do you think that if you
talking
know
about terrible PR,
if you know that they're
right? So yeah, Andrew Wilson comes out of nowhere and immediately he's pushing back on Candace, but I don't think Andrew Wilson is necessarily supporting TPUSA and or Erica. I don't think that he's sponsored by them. I don't think that he is fighting for them or defending Erica's honor, because if he is, I'm against him, right? Because I think there's something weird about TPUSA. And by the way, for what it's worth, I've never liked Charlie Kirk or TPUSA. I'm not going to like them after Kirk is assassinated, like Kirk wasn't a full-blown Zionist. And maybe he pushed back a little bit, or maybe he kind of switched sides at the end. But for a majority of his career, he was a full-blown Zionist, and he sympathized with the genocide. Or he never sympathized with the genocide, sorry. So just to establish that as my own framework. However, look, from the public eye, this guy is in front of Candace challenging all her claims. No one knew who he was before this. I knew who he was, but no one knew who he was before this. Then for somebody else, what seems to follow, like I'm saying, what must be suggested here is it only makes sense, pay attention to my language, that he is sponsored by TPUSA. He was sent here to take Candace down, right? Or he's just pushing back on Candace because he feels like Candace is dumb and Candace has no evidence for her claims. Both are legitimate theories. Both are plausible, right? But which one can be more firmly established with evidence? Well, of course, the latter, that he's just going against Candace, not that he's actually paid by TPUSA. Again, this is why it's important that they're operating on the same framework, because if they're not, there's this disconnect the whole time. And so more logical, evidence-based, debate bro type of people are going to watch this and go, Andrew smoked her. And people who are here for the rhetoric, or people who are even here to entertain the idea of if there's X and Y, what must necessarily follow is Z. So this is what I believe based on history, based on my opinion, based on how I feel, based on the government lying to us. Yeah, there's some credibility in that direction as well. That's what we do with Israel all the time and the corruption in the Middle East. The problem is, though, you don't always have evidence. So you have to suggest things strongly rather than say this is absolutely what happened, right? And even with Israel, when we do that in the Middle East, the fact of the matter is there's declassified government documents and or there are statements from official spokespeople actually proving what we're saying. But you kind of get what I'm saying. Hopefully that's not too convoluted. I hope I'm making sense there.
There's a huge debate that's coming up that's going to be probably one of the most viewed that year. And one of the debaters calls you and says, I'm taking this position. This is the position that I feel like there's the most evidence for. And Candace also agreed to answer many of my questions in regards to this. So if you got pertinent evidence here that I can use, I'd definitely like take a look.
What is the...
It was actually amazing to me. It really was actually amazing to me how if you approach people in good faith and just say, hey, I'd actually like to know what the facts and details are around this, they actually do talk to you. It's amazing.
Yeah, I just do not believe, that they are doing this in good faith. I don't believe that anything you have done has demonstrated that's in good faith. It demonstrates that you walked into Turning Point USA headquarters and came out a different man because you were critical of the organization. You were critical of Erica, and now you're sitting here going, well, Candace, I want to interrogate you for an hour and a half about everything you've ever said about Erica. Have you ever been
critical of somebody that you hadn't met and then you meet them and you're less critical of them?
And the inverse has happened too. I was less critical about Erica, and now I'm more critical about her.
But I'm asking you, isn't it the case that there's people you've been critical of and then you've met them and you're less critical after you meet them?
Too retarded. I feel like if you think that she's dumb and let's just talk about your record. I mean, you're a person that has spent time in what most people would term to be the manosphere, talking about well, yeah.
I debate against
against feminists
and red pillars.
Okay.
And a lot of the actual. So I'm a Christian ethicist.
And then you go on to Joe Rogan, and you're like soft explaining away why Erica had to take over Charlie's company when they don't have a parent at home. So now
I didn't watch the Joe Rogan interview. If that's true, that I don't like that. If that's true, I didn't watch his Joe Rogan interviews, but I don't know if he was soft explaining it. But I'd have to watch for myself. I don't know. From how Candace is framing it, he went on JRE and was being an apologist for TPUSA, but I think Andrew's still pretty critical of TPUSA.
You're a feminist icon, like you just go into the headquarters and you just shift all of your perspectives.
That's a bizarre criticism. Like nobody's in the bigger girl boss position than you.
Yeah, I'm actually no.
You're in the biggest of the girl boss positions. Like you don't have to do this. Look, you just do this. You could definitely not do it at all and be fine, right? But you still do.
I would say that you are making a comparison that cannot be compared because Erica's husband was just assassinated in front of the world.
Which makes sense why she would take the organization over.
No, it makes sense why you would go home to your kids, just so you know.
Wait a second. That's bizarre.
Yeah, because they don't have a parent. They don't have a parent and they've just suffered a trauma. You don't go into the office 6 days later.
You want to protect your husband's legacy.
Yeah. Actually, these bitches out here are shameless. So it's totally plausible to believe that Erica would want to take over the position. Candace is making that assertion with the idea in mind and the belief that all women would do the right thing when that's just not the case. You can't depend on people to do the right thing. It is very plausible that Erica is a shady piece of shit and she just wants to take over TPUSA and not care about her husband's death, but rather see it as a point of leverage so that she can be the leader and be a high political voice. That's also very possible, right? I don't think that, what Candace is kind of vaguely suggesting, to be clear, is she's saying, well, Candace had some strings, Candace is suggesting that Erica may have been pulling some strings that helped in covering up the actual story as to what happened with Charlie Kirk, or even if you're going in the extreme direction saying that she was involved in his assassination and aided with it so that she could take over TPUSA when she should really be going home to her kids. But it could also be the case that somebody really did kill Charlie Kirk, whoever it was, and she now sees an opening that she can fill. These girls out here are ruthless. 1 out of 10 girls, 2 out of 10 girls are going to go, I'm going to go home and take care of the kids. A lot of women will pick up that business and run it. So, you know, you've got to consider that as well. We live in a pretty cynical world. We live in a crude world where people do some detestable things for money, power, and fame. As unfortunately, I must admit, those are the roots of all evil. Not to be the good guy moral policing, but money, power, and fame is where you will find a majority of the evil in the world.
Right?
No.
And you're trying to find some
The
new
legacy
normal.
is his children, not the organization.
It's both.
But to her, the legacy may be the organization. And she's suggesting that because she feels that way, she has some involvement. No, she just may have seen that open up right after he was assassinated and gone right for it. Because the way they got married was weird too. I don't think they had an organic marriage. I think it was like set up. Didn't they meet at like an airport and like talk about Israel or some shit? There's a lot of weird things about their marriage. There's a lot of weird things about their marriage. And she has some weird history of being like this beauty queen, and she was with other guys. And look, like I said, I don't want to make this like an Erica attack fest, but we cannot sit here and act like this lady is normal. There's some oddness to her. Do I think she was involved in the assassination? No. I just think she's leveraging the situation opportunistically. That's my opinion.
Both.
No,
Yes, it is both. It's totally rational and reasonable to believe that it would be both Turning Point USA, that is part of Charlie Kirk's legacy. He worked his whole life for it.
I think this is why people think she's sus.
And his children. Now, for you, though, to say that anybody's a girl boss, right? That's like the pot calling the kettle black.
That came out of your mouth.
No, that was you. You brought up girl boss.
Girl boss came out of your mouth.
Yeah, I'm telling you that you.
So this is the moment here where I felt like a lot of people made their minds up about the debate. This wasn't good. This was pretty bad for Andrew, in my opinion.
It seems pretty, like, if you're going to engage and you're going to say the evidence is overwhelming that Tyler Robinson is guilty, I just think that you should, like,
right.
Can you tell me one
Then let's do the
charge
counter.
that he's...
You can really, hang on, this is a great gotcha.
No. You just got to ask me, play clips out of context, put me in the hot seat, so please just answer the question.
This is fair. Name all 7 since you've been following the case.
Okay, sure. You
ahead.
name one.
Yeah, you named all 7.
I'm happy to do that, but can you name one?
Bro said L. Erica, L. Candace, L. Wilson. Okay, bro, whose side are you on? Yo, that's funny. L. Erica, L. Candace, L. Wilson. That's funny. Sagno Sprite says, did you see the video of Candace shared about Tyler Robinson doing the military crawl on top of the building? What do you think about that? Yeah, I saw that. Is that actual footage? I mean, I didn't. Again, to me, it wasn't remarkable, right? I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Guys, I need like, by the way, thanks for the 5 Sagnos. Good to see you here. I haven't seen you here in a while. I need like something a little bit more remarkable than that, you know? And I'm sure it will come out. I need something a little bit more groundbreaking. I don't know if him doing a military crawl that is very professional and sus, I don't know if that points to like all the alternate theories being true. I think that there's a lot of things about the assassination and the case that could come off as weird with a lack of evidence. Thereof, right now, we have a lack of evidence because we haven't gone to trial yet. And so people are drawing connections and connecting dots, and it's like, this is a little bit too premature. It may steer us in the wrong direction. Some of the alternate theories, certainly, they're worth talking about, like the bullet, like the shirt. I think those are things that are odd. I think if you watch the video enough, again, viewer discretion advised, you may come to that same conclusion. It's odd. But some other things are just crazy. Like they're eating Charlie Kirk. Okay. Like, we can't take you seriously, bro. Or I think the trapdoor theory, like, that's wild. So we have to be very careful. Just so we don't look dumb later. Look, run around with all the theories you want. I don't mind theorizing, but I don't want to lose credibility in the future looking crazy. That's just why I'm concerned about really spending way too much time on things that are not substantiated by evidence or things that aren't groundbreaking and where I can positively point to the fact that the government narrative is absolute bullshit. You know, I just why I'm careful about it. I saw the video of him on the roof. I don't know if that was real, but if it was real, I didn't think that it was anything that was worth losing sleep over. But that's just me. Maybe you disagree.
I think he's been charged with murder.
But this is the moment where I think Candace had a little bit more decisiveness than he did, or how can I frame it? I think that she walked away with some points here, to say the least.
That's actually incorrect.
Okay, great. Now name all 7.
He doesn't even. This is like
name all 7.
And I
can you
think
name all 7?
I can.
Then do it.
Sure, you don't have to
do it. No, do it. I'll count them. Go ahead.
You don't
name
have to put
them.
your fingers up. I
Okay,
can do
hang on.
that.
Name them.
Yeah, sure.
Name them.
The first charge is.
Yeah, I know that's what they were saying was proof that Tyler took the shot. I'm saying, but from the other side, Candace's side and others, they're saying that he's moving like ex-military, like a professional. I saw so many videos of people drawing comparisons to him and the official like military crawl, saying that it's very suspect. That was the angle as well. And so I just thought that was like, bro, really? So that's what I was saying. That's what I mean there.
Aggravated murder, because that's what carries
Okay.
a death sentence
So
in the
murder.
state of Utah. No,
Next.
that's not. That is literally not murder.
Okay.
And so
Next.
just for people, no, don't. I don't have to do it in a time limit. There's nothing going on. And just to explain to people the difference of why that really matters and shows that he doesn't actually care about this at all is because aggravated murder, it's narrowly defined,
Just
and
avoiding
because
the
it carries
question.
a death sentence. I'm going to answer the question.
Okay,
You're
I'm
just going to
waiting.
recognize that your strategy of thinking that people are intimidated when you try to put a time constraint doesn't work,
Yeah.
and you'll be better the next time you debate
I got
someone.
it. I got it. Give me the other ones.
The more you cut me off, the longer I'll take. Do you want to just wait for me to finish of why that's a big difference so that
No,
people
I just
don't walk
want
away?
you to list the charges.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. You just don't get to pretend that there's a time constraint for me to do that.
Well, how long does it take you to list 7 charges?
Because I'm speaking. You just got to.
It sounds like you're just delaying it because you don't know them.
I know all 7 of them,
Then
and I'm
tell
going to
me
say
them.
again, because you're going to get embarrassed. You don't have to rush this. I'm also showing an example of a very flawed debate strategy. I actually
well,
am
I
under
got
no
one.
time constraint.
I got one.
Great. The second charge is the felony discharge of a weapon. The next 2 charges are for obstruction of justice.
Okay.
The next 2 charges are for witness tampering. And the
What's
final,
the specific charges, though?
that is them. Obstruction of justice,
Both of
obstruction
those-
of justice, witness tampering, witness tampering.
Okay, and there's no other specifics to them.
Well, I can tell you why he's being
No,
charged
no,
with
no.
it.
Just the charges and then 7?
Yeah, see, the bad thing is when you try to be an a-hole and it doesn't work.
What's the 7th?
The last charge is violence in front of a minor.
Okay, got it. So then he's being charged with murder. You just say aggravated murder. That's the distinction. You just want to.
It's a massive. It's
Got
like
it.
you cannot
Massive.
say murder versus aggravated
Massive
murder.
distinction.
This gets to the entire crux of why him being up for the death sentence. And I actually find the defense's filing about why this is not aggravated to be very compelling of why it's not aggravated murder. I actually think that if the state was going to even try to pull this off, they should have charged him with just murder. And then I do also, again, want to stress to audiences that debate strategy, it's some sport. I think he thinks it's a blood sport. It's not. It's about being right and being principled when you're engaging. And you can make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time, but at least be genuine in pretending that you care about this case enough to know one of the 7 charges that are up against Tyler Robinson when you say the evidence is overwhelming that he's guilty. If you would like to move to final statements, I'm fine. I want to make sure Andrew has had the time that he has requested.
I think your team would like to pull up the 7 charges that he just asked you about. If
Sure.
you guys want to pull that up just to confirm
And so they were
the 7
she
you
got
went
'em.
through.
She knew him. And that's, to me, look, people are going to say, Riyadh, it doesn't matter. I'm just telling you how the audience is going to take that. That is powerful that he didn't know any and she knew all 7. That was kind of her biggest gotcha moment because it would display that she's following the case a little bit more closely than he is, right? That's what would necessarily follow from that. So
Can you guys zoom in a little bit for
Aggravated
the,
murder, felony discharge of a firearm, obstruction of justice, which is counts 3 and 4, 5 and 6, tampering with a witness, and count 7,
violent
I said offense in the presence of a
in front
minor.
of a child?
Yeah.
That's what
So
I said.
5, 6, tampering witness, 3rd-degree felony.
we may be buffering a little bit. Sorry. Did we just buffer for a moment? Are we back? People, are we back? Are we back? I think we're good. Okay. Did the stream drop? Did we just buffer for a moment? All right, we're good. Anyways, so yeah, there's that. some debate clips, but we'll get into the news because there's way too much news going on for me to just, let's see. We good? One? All right, we're back. All right, good. Sorry. Let's...
When you tweeted...
Let us get into the situation in Lebanon. Like I said, that was Candace's better moment of the debate. But it was, to me, it was just a lot of that, like the petty banter back and forth, kind of semantics. Not much of really that they didn't get into the patsy theory that much. So I was upset about it, but whatever. Maybe she'll debate somebody else at some point. But like I said, a lot of people think Candace won. So I had this PBD video here, but I'm not going to have time. So we'll get into the situation in Lebanon. So again, this is a big story, of course, out of the Middle East, and this is big because of the fact that Israel has largely kept themselves at bay from attacking Lebanon or southern Lebanon and Hezbollah with airstrikes and aggressive air campaigns since the end of June, when they brokered some sort of truce deal that was temporary, hosted by the United States, the June 4th ceasefire, so the beginning of June, excuse me. So this article here is by Al Jazeera. I have a video queued up as well. We'll see if we can get to it. But it says, why has Israel escalated attacks in southern Lebanon despite ceasefire? So Lebanon's Ministry of Public Health said at least 11 people, including several children, were killed on Saturday in Israeli strikes in the southern district of Nebatia. Lebanon's national news agency reported that 7 people were killed and 3 wounded when Israeli warplanes struck a house on the outskirts of Ansar village, destroying the building. 4 other people were killed in a strike on the village of Deir al-Zahrani. This is an area seen by people as safe, but as an air attack has now hit, there is now this escalation along with apparently more Israeli attacks in southern Lebanon. We are seeing many demolitions. They are erasing towns and villages in the south, he said. And this is from... not sure who said it. But anyways... The Israeli army carried out an airstrike on the Ali al-Tahir Ridge on the Nebatia district near the UNESCO-listed Belfort Castle, and we covered that before. Footage verified by Al Jazeera showed flames and smoke rising from the area between the Ali al-Tahir hills and the Debsha area amid the sound of explosions. El Manar, Hezbollah's TV channel, said the blasts were a result of Israeli airstrikes in the area, while Nebatia News Channel reported that the raids took place near the town of Kafr Rahman. The area has seen increased Israeli army activity in recent days and weeks after a lull following the June truce. Israel said the area has strategic significance and is targeting Hezbollah infrastructure. It is targeting Hezbollah infrastructure, excuse me. Roman, shout out to you. Thank you for being a member for 3 months. Explosions have also been reported in Lebanon's southern towns of Bint Jebel and Taiba, according to the NNA. Israeli drones also targeted the outskirts of the town of Al-Mansouri. Artillery shelling was reported in the towns of Sarbin, Barashit, Al-Mansouri, and Wadi Zibkin. And we have a video here by Al Jazeera, so we can just quickly watch it.
Mingles with the sound of drones overhead. 7 people were killed here when an Israeli airstrike destroyed this house and damaged the one next to it. Among the dead were Zainab and her 3 children. She was a teacher. The family had sought refuge in Ansar only 10 days earlier, hoping it would be safer here. It wasn't. Their story is one among many in southern Lebanon, where civilians displaced by months of fighting are finding fewer places beyond the reach of Israeli.
Could they have gotten somebody else to do this video? No offense, but this guy is talking at like 1 mile an hour.
Strikes. As we left the scene, an ambulance alerted us to another attack.
Allahu Akbar.
In Deir al-Zahrani, only a few kilometers away, another Israeli airstrike. This time in broad daylight. More casualties. Lebanese authorities say several people were killed and others wounded. Lebanon's president, speaker, and prime minister condemned the attacks. President Joseph Owens said they violated the framework agreement with Israel and international laws protecting civilians. This is adding another layer of complication to this conflict. There is a ceasefire, but there is no ceasefire. This is the dilemma here, because the Lebanese government and the Israeli government have reached a kind of an agreement, and this agreement is not holding practically. Yes, it's holding in headlines, it's holding in kind of negotiations on the table, but it's not holding for people who are being killed.
Israel says its latest strikes followed what it described as an action by Hezbollah against Israeli soldiers on the Ali Tahir Ridge. It overlooks Nabatiyeh and surrounding areas and has become one of the most contested points in the conflict.
Very contested point between the IDF and Hezbollah, the Ali Tahir Ridge. We covered that before. That is where the IDF previously bombed the shit out of in order to remove these alleged Hezbollah strongholds. But it is a strategic vantage point for either opposing side, whoever can grab it, which is why Israel getting the Belfort Castle in that province was huge, because it's the first time they've controlled that in 26 years. And bigger than that, it's symbolic or emblematic of their control, creating that buffer zone that they desperately desire to create in southern Lebanon without any opposition or hostilities.
Israeli forces have been operating around the ridge, outside the territory they are occupying, while repeatedly striking surrounding areas. Hezbollah says Israel is using military pressure to impose new realities on the ground. Its Secretary General Naim Qassem warned that continued attacks would not go unanswered.
And that's the issue, and that's what you don't want to hear. Continued attacks won't go unanswered. And so Netanyahu tweeted about it. Of course he did. He said, "This morning, Hezbollah violated the ceasefire in Lebanon by attacking our soldiers in the security zone." That's hilarious. That sentence in and of itself is hilarious, and I'll tell you why. But he continues on here, "which protects Israeli communities just across the border. The Hezbollah attack seriously injured 3 of our soldiers. The IDF responded by striking the Hezbollah terror headquarters, which ordered the attack. Only later did the IDF learn that Hezbollah deliberately put civilians in that military compound." Yeah, sure they did. Hezbollah is willing to do anything, including using its own civilians as human shields. They're still doing this to falsely accuse Israel of deliberately targeting civilians, which the IDF clearly did not. And so, hey, this is funny. The 9 principles of propaganda: the lie, focus, repeat, blame, provoke. Anyway, so look, and who believes that? Nobody. So there's no point in even debunking it, because we know these lies have gone on too long. But this is serious, and the reason why I think it's serious, because more than anything, look, the situation in Lebanon is not going to end anytime soon. But as it relates to the Iran war, this is why it's that much more critical for here in the United States. If Israel and Hezbollah continue to fight, there will be no situation in where we can have a legitimate negotiation with Iran. Now, the IRGC has already come out and they've said explicitly that we are not going to let go of control of the Strait until Trump is no longer president. And so maybe we can work out a deal, and maybe we can get some money, and so that we can open the Strait so that the world can feel some economic relief and the energy markets don't crash. However, we are not going to relinquish our control of the Strait. It is upon the United States to come and try and force it and take it from us. And that's something we've tried to do. We tried to do it last month in July when we went back and forth for 2 weeks, and we failed miserably. And after Trump made that huge bluff that he was going to hit them harder than anything we've seen since World War II, immediately he called it off, and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, begged him to actually call that off and any further hostilities, because he is paying for the war as a result of the United States' aggression in the Strait of Hormuz, because we want to open up that vital waterway that is responsible for 1/5 of the world's oil, but we can't because it's in Iran's area. It's their territory. It is far easier for us, and I've said this many times, or it is far easier for them to secure and really continue to disrupt that strait than it is for us to go across the world and send USS Abraham Lincoln and where soldiers are demoralized and try and take back control of that strait. So, you know, you look here. Let's see if I can get it pulled up. One moment. Let's see. So we spoke about this. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene, but it says here the Trump administration is actively discussing using nuclear weapons on Iran in strategy meetings, per former U.S. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. MTG says, yes, you read that correctly. It's real. I'm not speculating. Our government is the one actually discussing lowering the nuclear threshold in order to use it against Iran. She says that here. And this is as of Saturday. Iran believes a new round of fighting with the United States is unavoidable and has now decided to focus all efforts on preparing battle instead of diplomacy, per a senior Iranian source in Tehran. And that's gravely concerning for many reasons, but mainly just for the fact that we cannot afford any more war. The United States is in a position where our weapons are running low in the region, and this comes out of the Wall Street Journal, this comes out of the Washington Post, this comes out of several mainstream credible outlets that the United States is now running low on offensive and now defensive munitions. And as a result, a lot of the Gulf countries that are allied with us are sitting ducks waiting to be hit by Iranian strikes and or Iranian drones, whether that'd be from missiles or whatever it is. And they prove that they're bold, and they'll prove that they do that because they started up the war again by hitting Jordan when Netanyahu was in the United States. And that's huge. And I always talk about that and no one realizes, but now Iran has turned the tables and they have not become the defensive person anymore, but they've rather started playing offense and attacking the United States just when they feel like we're not being honest and practicing diplomacy the right way, which is something they've never done before. So that's a new development, that's a new stage, that's a new face that Iran has taken as the aggressor, as the one in control of the situation. And unfortunately, they are quite frankly in full control of the situation in the Middle East. So what does Lebanon have to do with any of this? Well, the issue is one of Iran's main requests is for Israel to take their hands off of southern Lebanon because that's where Iran's strongest proxy exists, Hezbollah. And why is Hezbollah the most important proxy? It's on Israel's northern border. It's one of the only proxy groups that directly, I think it's the only proxy group that borders Israel as close as they do on the northern border in southern Lebanon. And not only that, they funnel the most money to them, they funnel the most weapons to them, and Hezbollah has proved to be very difficult for Israel to contain and deal with since the 80s when they were created at their inception. And following that, you had several different wars between Hezbollah and Israel, and where actually Hezbollah forced Israel to pull out because militarily they were overpowering them. We saw this in the 90s. We saw this in 2006, I believe. We saw this in some ways in 2024. And we're seeing this now where Hezbollah is fighting back and Israeli casualties are somewhere estimated around 3,000 or 4,000 people dead, 3,000 or 4,000 casualties from the IDF side. And I think it's quite even on the Hezbollah side or the proxy side as well. And so it's imperative that Iran actually has control in southern Lebanon and their proxy is surviving and breathing well. Because if they're not, well, then that will relinquish and kind of diminish a lot of the control and or influence that Iran has in the Middle East that offers a checks and balances system to counter Israel's autonomous power. And why do I say autonomous? Well, the regime change in Syria really changed things. After Ahmad al-Shara took power from the previous regime, which is the Bashar al-Assad regime, Syria now became a friend or a vague ally of the Israeli state. That's just the truth, and I know a lot of Syrians won't like to hear that. And I know a lot of Syrians are relieved that Bashar al-Assad is gone. And Bashar al-Assad was a brutal dictator who killed so many Syrians. And that's why they ripped his statues down and defaced him everywhere. There's no secret to it. There's no conspiracy about it. However, al-Shara is really not that much more beneficial for the Middle East as a whole. Why? Because now he will close off the territory that the IRGC utilized to export weapons and money and anything else, really embargoes to Hezbollah in order to keep them strong and keep them prosperous in fighting against Israel. And now that no longer exists because he's kind of closed that avenue for the Iranian regime to utilize. Again, that's in southern Syria as well as Syria as a whole. Prior, with the Bashar al-Assad regime, Syria was a hotspot and a vantage point for not only Russia, but Iran as well. And so you had a lot of the proxies existing there. Hezbollah existed with great presence in Syria as well during the Assad regime. And after he was overthrown, by the way, mysteriously, he was overthrown very easily. And we can imagine that's because of Turkey supporting that as well as the United States. Once he took power, that offered a little bit less resistance for Israel to actually go in and now take what is going to be the Golan Heights. Israel is now saying they must take the Golan Heights as a security zone, and Colombia and the Colombian president is now sponsoring and endorsing that idea and recognizing the Golan Heights to belong to Israel. And I'm sure a few other countries will eventually follow. Maybe there's going to be a little bit of a delay because of how fresh the genocide was, so people are a little bit more reluctant to support Israel. However, at some point, I can guarantee you other countries will follow suit. It's just what always happens. And even in the southern part of Syria, As-Suwaida, which is controlled by the Druze, it's pretty imaginable that Israel would try and take control of that because Druze are allied with the IDF, and there's actually several IDF soldiers that are from As-Suwaida or are Druze. So Israel is taking advantage of the situation where really the leader of Syria is powerless. And so the Syrian people, or really the Syrian regime, had to make a decision that had a necessary trade-off for better or worse. Syria can now live in prosperity without this brutal dictator that allows different countries to harbor the country and plant their influence, like Russia or like in Iran or others, and the people would suffer, but then Israel can't really stick their nose in it. And that's the benefit, is that Israel doesn't really have as much influence or power to play around with Syria because Iran has a heavy and strong military presence there. But once Bashar al-Assad is removed, then Ahmed al-Shara, formerly known as Mohammed Jolani, this guy is former Al-Qaeda, by the way, from the Al-Nusra front, which is what was the Al-Qaeda front in northern Syria, and where he stayed, which was the Idlib province. When he took power of the country, and by the way, I do believe that he was backed by the United States and Turkey because of how seamlessly he took control of the country within the 12 or 13-day period that they conquered the country back from the brutal regime that they couldn't seem to overthrow for years and years on end. He got it immediately in 2 weeks, and that was in December of 2024. But when he took control, the trade-off was now, you got to play nice with Israel, but the country will benefit from relieved sanctions. They'll do an energy deal with Qatar. They'll be formalized in the Middle East. Countries will start to work with them, and that's what's happened. And as a result, Syria is growing economically, and their GDP will grow as a result of him being the leader. And Syria was a suffering country, a third world country for that matter, prior to his leadership, but probably in the next 5 to 10 years, as long as the new leader, Ahmed al-Shara, plays nice with Benjamin Netanyahu and probably allows him to annex southern Syria, or at least the Golan Heights, then and only then can the Syrian people guarantee their freedom, their right to self-determination, their sovereignty. And that's kind of the situation. Israel is this colonial-like power in the Middle East that if you don't play nice with them, you will be overthrown, you will be regime changed, and the country as a whole and the economy will be destabilized. And what must follow after that necessarily? People are displaced, people are killed, civil war, militias break out, and people race to power to try and fill that power vacuum that Israel threads the needle in so meticulously keeping open, and so that people can continuously fight for that power but never actually attain it. Insert ISIS, insert Al-Qaeda. These were all beneficial to Israel, especially Al-Qaeda. And we know that from 2001 when they were hitting dance moves on a certain roof somewhere. So, you know, it is a situation that is pretty obvious in the way that it is unfolding. And it seems like as this continues on, it's going to be impossible for Lebanon to actually invoke some sort of peace, which is what the base government in Lebanon wants, is peace with Israel. They don't want to continuously fight them, but that will be impossible if Iran has presence there. But then again, Iran's presence there and the proxy network being there is very necessary to actually keep Israel in check, because that has been the biggest obstacle in the way of them taking control and annexing a lot of Lebanon, if not all of it, in its entirety. That's what Ben-Gvir wants anyways. And so if Hezbollah falls, you can guarantee yourself that what will certainly come after that is complete and total domination and hegemony of Israel across not only Lebanon, but then Syria, and that will be the Levant region, which is very influential, geostrategically important. And once they take control of the Levant, Israel can certainly take control of a majority of the Middle East, because all the Gulf countries already play nice with them. Saudi Arabia may or may not sign the Abraham Accords in the next 5 to 10 years, depending on what happens with the situation of the people in Gaza, and as well as the fact that you have to think about the UAE serving as a strong Israeli proxy on the Persian Gulf. And that brings me to this. Look at what the UAE and their spokespeople and their politicians and their political commentators, whatever they are, look what they're saying. My enemy isn't Israel. My main enemy is the Islamic Republic and those Muslim Brotherhood bastards. Simple as that. And so you've seen, like I said this in the beginning of the stream, you see this new unfolding where the UAE and the Emiratis, it was once a point where, you know, there was this time they were a little bit more careful and reluctant to voice their support for Israel despite the Abraham Accords. And now it's just the mask is off and they're showing their true colors. And I mean, is this even surprising from the UAE? They're the ones that are administering a genocide in Sudan, funding the rapid support forces. By the way, several mainstream, world-renowned councils have confirmed this. So it's not even a conspiracy anymore. Just Google, is the UAE funding the genocide in Sudan? And I think the AI overview on Google literally tells you yes. And they still try and deny it and say that they're not. So, you know, the UAE is very, very closely allied with Israel. And it makes it nerve-wracking, because there is this acute pressure on Saudi Arabia to sign the Abraham Accords, and that is the ship that cannot sail. from the doc that is keeping Israel at bay. If Saudi Arabia signs the Abraham Accords, the Middle East is over. And what I mean by the Middle East being over is there is no more Muslim freedom. There is no more Islamic or Muslim or Arab hegemony and or right to self-determination at all. It's over. And by the way, that's why Hamas invaded on October 7th, was because they were anticipating the Crown Prince was going to sign the Abraham Accords, because Biden was trying to winnow that between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And they sensed that coming, as well as the other reasons that we've gone over before. So, you know, and what's worse than the fact that now the situation has escalated in Lebanon? What could be worse than that, right? Because now we know that this pushes diplomacy even further down the road for the United States, which is what Israel wants to do, which is why they will attack without hesitation. And by the way, Israel has been very selective with how they attack. When that ceasefire was brokered on April 6th between the U.S. and Iran, Israel then hit Lebanon and Beirut like 100 times with strikes, killed thousands of people. But over the course of time, but now they've been a little bit more measured in stepping in only when they need to. And so when things calm down a little bit too much, Israel steps in and provokes the matter that much more, so that they just kick the can down the road and make it that much harder for the United States to really achieve peace or achieve diplomacy. And that's what they do methodically, and they've been successful at it through the entirety of this war. And what could be worse than seeing this, understanding everything I just told you? U.S. servicemen in one of the Gulf states have scribbled protest messages on the dust of an aircraft flap. BB's cucks, be a good goy and do what Israel tells you to. Operation Epstein Fury, peace deal 64 incoming. That's pretty good. All this for the Holy Land. I love Israel. I am a good goyim. I'm serious. Look. Peace deal number 64, peace deal coming. I love Israel. I'm a good goy. They wrote this with the dust. Let's see. Or they inscribed with their fingers. BB's cucks. Operation Epstein Fury. Niggas playing tic-tac-toe. These niggas are just ready to die for Israel, and it's so sad, actually. It's so sad. You know, I can hit the fa button again, and this is kind of funny, but there's also like a really grim side to this. These are U.S. servicemen. These are U.S. soldiers. These are people who are supposed to defend the country, and they're not defending the country at all. Israel poses all the threats to the United States. We know that. Iran poses like no legitimate threat to the United States. And so it's pretty heartbreaking and demoralizing to see this being written on this wing. You know, it's pretty crazy to see that all the rhetoric floating around here in the United States is actually what these soldiers on these ships are saying. And by the way, spirits are very low aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln. I saw an article the other day where the conditions are growing even more difficult for the soldiers on board, where they don't have access to anything. Let's see if I can get an article on this really quick. So we can see here, Democrats demand answers from Trump on USS Abraham Lincoln conditions. Let's see if they'll talk about the conditions on the ship. Let's see. Give me one sec. Let me see if I can pull this up. Should have had it ready. Sorry. Where's New York Times? I kind of like New York Times. There we go. You know what? Is it even worth it for me to... I'm sure you guys saw, but conditions on the ship are pretty bad. And soldiers are demoralized. And so you see that writing there too. Oh yeah, sailor went overboard from the USS Abraham Lincoln this month as conditions on the ship prompt lawmakers' demands for answers. A sailor went overboard earlier this month off the USS Abraham Lincoln, 3 U.S. officials told CNN amid reports of worsening mental health for crew members on the ship during an extended deployment for the Iran war. The sailor was rescued within an hour, according to one of the officials, and was medically evaluated. A different official said that the sailor had gone overboard wearing a life vest and was not injured, adding that the Navy considered the incident a mental health episode. The sailor had been assigned to an air wing on the ship, the third official said, and was recovered by an air wing search and rescue helicopter treated by Abraham Lincoln's medical department and transferred off-ship for follow-on care. One of the officials described the seas as rough and specified that the incident had occurred on August 3rd. The incident of the sailor going overboard, which has not been previously reported, adds to growing list of concerns about the crew on the ship. Several Democratic lawmakers are calling for answers after concerns were raised by families of sailors aboard Lincoln about the deteriorating living conditions and worsening mental health during the ship's record-breaking deployment. Since the Lincoln left its home port of San Diego last November, the aircraft carrier has been deployed for more than 250 days after being redirected to the Middle East to support U.S. operations in the war with Iran. Now entering its 6th month with more than 5,000 sailors and Marines aboard, it has not made a port call in more than 200 days, setting a modern-day record for consecutive days at sea, according to Senator Richard Blumenthal. The USS George Washington Carrier Group, which finished a port visit in Vietnam on August 5th, is currently headed to the Middle East to replace the Lincoln, a separate U.S. official told CNN. So, you know, you can see why I'm growing in concern here. But let's see. I got some super chats here. And then we can go into Erdogan's interview. And let's see. Just want to see if my brother's firing up soon. Oh, he's about to, yeah. So I'll read some chats. And then we may just have to end. Sorry, I took too much time on the debate, but I think you guys enjoyed it. Why not? We can get into the... It's been slow in the news anyway, so the debate... Look, guys, the debate saved us, all right? The news is really trash. There's nothing's happening. So the debate saved us. Unless you guys want to see me talk about Trump mandating new vaccines, I think we should be appreciative of this debate. So let me read some chats and we'll close out here. Roman said, L debate, no structure. Yeah, true. J.R. Williams says, do you think the war started to have oil flowing through Israel and to distract from Lebanon, or did they think IRGC would capitulate and install PBD? No, I don't think that's why the war was started. But Israel does want control of resources and oil at some point. I'm sure that's one of the goals of this war. Suheibaz says, just went to Spain and gas is still cheap there. Nice. I want to visit Spain. David said, so Israel's attacking Lebanon because of Hezbollah. Sorry, let me read that again. Israel is attacking Lebanon because of Hezbollah. Well, that's just a very, very beneficial excuse that they can use. It's a very convenient excuse that they can use. They want Lebanon. I don't know how deep I can get into this on YouTube, to be honest with you, but Israel does believe that Lebanon belongs to them, at least the south. And so what they're doing is creating this buffer zone from the Litani River all the way to the northern border of Israel, which is what makes up southern Lebanon, which is controlled by Shias for the most part, Shiite Muslims. And Hezbollah is representative of Shiite Islam. So is Iran. So is the IRGC. So it's really like eradicating this Iranian proxy on their border. And also then just so conveniently saying, oh, we're also going to control Lebanon too. Not like give it back to the government. That's not their goal. So yes, Israel is attacking Lebanon because of Hezbollah, but at the same time, Hezbollah existing in Lebanon is what gives Israel the excuse to attack them without any human rights organizations and or governments clashing against Israel. What prevents the world from condemning them as hard as they already would have, like they did with Gaza. But I think that Israel will never pull out of southern Lebanon, whether Hezbollah disarms or not, which is why they won't disarm. So that's that. If we knew for a fact, here's the thing. Hezbollah was created in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah exists to counter Israeli aggression. So, I mean, that kind of answers the question as well. And that shows you who's kind of wrong and who's actually playing defense, if that makes sense. Anyways, Chocolate Chad, nice name, says, Al-Shara took over quick because Hezbollah, Russia, Iran were all drawn in the wars. The height of Gaza war, Nasrallah died, Ukraine too, so Bashar had no backing. Yeah, Bashar had no backing, and Hassan Nasrallah dying was, I think, just a few weeks before Syria took over, or Al-Shara took over. Sagno Sprite said, when are you going to talk about JFK? Hey, shout out to you for being a member for 5 months. Thank you, Sagno Sprite. I have a video on JFK. You can find it, but maybe we'll talk about the declassified documents at some point. I never got to speak about the new ones that Trump declassified. So I can go over that. Don't leave, call Myron. Myron's doing true crime, so he's going to do his own thing tonight. I don't think he's covering the Middle East like that. If he does, he may cover it later. Somebody in the chat says, why do you hate on Shiite? I don't hate on Shiites, man. I joke around with you guys. Seriously, stop being sensitive. Don't be a pussy, okay? I don't hate on Shiites. It's one ummah, especially at a time like this. We are facing aggression from all angles. I don't hate on Shiites. And here's the thing. Shiites are the only ones fighting Israel. And they're not the ones administering a genocide on my country. That's actually Sunni Muslims. So, no, I don't hate on Shiites. I think the jokes got to your head. Take it easy. You guys do have heretical theology. Sorry, I've got to tell you. But it's okay. It's okay. I have no like real ill will or issue with them at all. I'd be friends with a Shiite. Let's see. Tim Pool was caught getting paid by Russia. Tim Pool crashed out. He walked off a Jubilee. We'll save it. We'll save it because the news is really slow. So we'll save that for the next stream. All right. So I think we're caught up on chats. Love all of you guys. Love every single one of you. Thanks for watching the debate with me. And yeah, we'll get back and we'll do a stream. I'd like to stream tomorrow. So we'll see what develops in the news. And if something big happens, certainly expect me to stream. But otherwise, you guys have a great rest of your night. Love all of you. And enjoy your Sunday. Still got some time left before you guys got to get to bed for the Matrix tomorrow. If you have a job. If you don't, I'm jealous. Love you guys. Peace.